Hello, noble people. My name is the Noble, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about some of your guys' Deltarune hot takes. I made a post on my YouTube for you guys to share your Deltarune hot takes, and you guys definitely provided some hot takes. This is inspired by Shay's video where they did these for Undertale. They also did it for Deltarune as well. This video is just for Deltarune specifically because obviously Chapter 3 and 4 is just released, and I kind of also needed to have a video just kind of sent out because the one video I am currently working on that is trying to talk about all of the characters connected to the night is taking a lot longer than I expected, and I also kind of wanted to have a video out to say a huge thank you to everyone who has subscribed and has been watching my videos. I just did my 300 subscribers special, and then I hit 500 subscribers like within a couple days. I even said I'll stay tuned for the 400 special, and I don't even know if I want to make it because the specials don't do that well as videos, so I just want to give everyone a huge thank you. But without further ado, let's get into these hot takes. And I do also want to mention, please be civil to everyone in the comments and the people that I show who their hot takes. I'm obviously going to kind of rail into them. I'm not going to full out call someone completely stupid or whatever. That's just really rude for no reason. However, the whole point is that these are hot takes. They're supposed to be spicy, and I might agree and disagree with some ones that you actually might not guess. So I hope you like this video. Without further ado, let's hop into it. We are starting off with a very hot take where they have two complaints, that being, I feel like the Roaring Titan was overhyped by the game. The Knight shouldn't have been the secret boss of Chapter 3. Yeah, it's a cool boss fight, but they don't belong as a secret boss. However, they are cool and an important character. So I do agree with the Knight obviously being an important character. That's pretty obvious. However, I completely disagree with these two takes. The Roaring wasn't, or the Titan really wasn't overhyped by the game at all. If you're talking about the actual climbing sections, I don't think that was necessarily hyping up the Titan itself. Like, keep in mind, the Roaring is gonna have like a bunch of Titans, and the fact that we were only able to really defeat one with the help of the old man speaks a lot about how scary the Roaring is going to be. And I don't really think it was hyped up other than those climbing sections. The only other thing we had was what Rase told us about the Roaring in Chapter 2, and we've had that to kind of dwell on for a while. And with the Knight being the secret boss, it does kind of break what we thought how the secret bosses were going to be. We thought they were going to be something discarded and thrown away, and they would be kind of corrupted or kind of insane in some way. But the idea that any character become a secret boss or a very imposing threat is really cool, and I personally love the Knight boss fight. It's one of the few actually really challenging boss fights I've seen in Deltarune. Ever since the Sands fight, I don't think we've had a fight that's on par with the Knight, and since they can literally just one-tap some of your characters, I really do feel like that they're both very well constructed. Now, that being said, if you personally don't like that fight, that's personally fine, but I don't think the Titan was overhyped at all. So next one is a really big one. Instead of reading the entire thing out, I'm going to kind of do a summary. This person does not think Gaster is going to be important, and people need to stop saying everything is about him. Asgore is just as bad as a father as Toriel is a mother, that being still kind of good with bad intentions. The music guys in Chapter 2, Sweet Cap and Cakes, are really annoying in their battle, and their songs are repetitive, and they're more chill after they become part of your city. And Chapter 3 is the worst chapter with still fun characters, but the novelty of the Zelda sections round off, and it feels very significantly shorter compared to the others. And Chess Theory is not dead, it is just evolved. That is a very big take, and a pretty hot take at that. I'm going to try and break this down piece by piece. First off, Gaster, I actually 100% agree with you that the fact that people need to stop saying Gaster's everything is about him. It can get a little bit grating when a lot of theories just try and run it back to Gaster instead of trying to come up with their own results, and that can get kind of annoying. But I don't think saying he's not an important character or he's not as important people think is not true. I really don't know how we would connect the voice who talks to us at the beginning in the Goner Maker section, and obviously the voice that talks to us constantly. We have the first OST literally called Another Hymn, so there is definitely going to be draws to Gaster, and he's probably going to be an important character, but not as important as people are saying. I will agree with you halfway in that. I don't think he's as important as people are saying, but he's still important at least somewhat. With the Asgore and Toriel being the equally poor parental figures, but still having good intentions, but just flawed, that is literally what their character is. I 1,000,000% agree with you that we obviously do know from what Toriel did with Susie, and she's trying to be a good mom. She's still trying to do that, but she does still have flaws. I mean, the ending sequence in chapter 4 with Sans, I mean, imagine not telling your kid where you are, and then when they come home, you're drunk with a random dude in their house. That's weird. And she still is a flawed character, and same thing with Asgore. We don't really know too much about Asgore's obviously background, and he still does have that kind of cringy dad aspect. I'm not going to say he doesn't, but they're still very good parents, but they're still at least flawed in some way. That's what makes the characters good. I actually kind of agree that the fact that Sweet Cat and Cakes are a little annoying. On multiple replays, their fight and their music can get insanely repetitive and insanely boring really fast. I definitely feel like they become a lot cooler and a lot better characters when, at the end, obviously they help you make your kind of thing, Megazord thing to fight Queen at the end. And the little interaction they have where they can play a special song for Noelle when you have her in the city, that's cool, but at the beginning they are a little annoying, and their battle and songs do become kind of meh after a while, so I agree with you on that. I don't think they're the worst character, but they are slightly annoying when you first get introduced on a replay. On their first time, it wasn't that bad. Chapter 3 being the worst chapter. Now, I wouldn't really consider this a hot take simply because I have seen a lot of people talk about how they don't think Chapter 3 is the best chapter. Now, not on my post specifically, but around the Deltarune community. I personally think Chapter 1 is the worst simply because it's the tutorial. It doesn't have as evolved themes for story and battle gimmicks as the other chapters have. But I really wouldn't consider Chapter 3 being the worst chapter a hot take, considering you even state why it is bad. If you just said it's the worst chapter and didn't provide any evidence, that would be a hot take. But considering you don't really like the Zelda sections and you feel like it's less fulfilling, that makes sense. It's definitely a much shorter chapter, and we don't go on a big adventure like in Chapter 2. We kind of just stay in the same place. I mean, there's only like really one area in Chapter 3 you go and explore, but I wouldn't necessarily call that a hot take, just an opinion of what you think the worst chapter in the game is. Chess theory isn't dead, just evolved. I actually kind of agree with this one. Now, I personally never really liked chess theory simply because I felt like it was weird to try and tie the secret bosses or bosses of the chapter to a chess piece because it restricted what kind of creative characters we could have. And I'm kind of happy in that aspect that we really aren't following chess theory for what it used to be, because Tenna is an amazing character, and Chapter 4 would have definitely been a worse chapter if it had kind of a main boss. I really don't see how we would be able to have like a main boss kind of like Queen or Tenna slotted into Chapter 4. That being said, theories change and adapt and evolve over time as we get more and more content. So saying that the theory isn't dead, it is evolved, is 100% right. We still do get one of the chess pieces in Chapter 3 with it being the knight, and Gerson being the bishop does fit his overall character actually very well. Obviously, he's in a church dark world, and obviously his son is a priest, so that does fit. So I kind of agree with you there. I will say old chess theory is dead, but having the chess sphere evolve into something new is just how theories go when it comes to getting more and more information as a game is still being developed. Going from a long post to a more shorter one, I wish we got multiple weird routes instead of just one. Toriel and Undyne should have been a larger part of Chapter 3. It should have been Napstablook, not Undyne. with the not so and Undyne, it could have gone either way. I think from the standpoint of the character only appearing at the end to attack the knight, it makes much more sense for it to be Undyne, especially since the knight wants the code that Undyne would have had. I don't feel like Napstablook had the code. As a matter of fact, when you talk to them in the light world, they only know the Undyne had a code. They didn't really know what it was for. And for the case of Toriel and Undyne being a larger part of Chapter 3, I could see how that could be unique, but I really like the dynamic that we did get in Chapter 3, with Toriel just being kind of a thing that Tenna's trying to keep secret. I feel like I personally didn't really want Undyne in the chapter at all, so I'm very happy that she was only really in that as a little bit of a cameo and lead up to the other chapters, and now we do have actual motives. If we didn't have Undyne and Toriel as the roles they were playing in Chapter 3, I feel like the chapter would have lost a lot of its substance personally. The idea that Tenna has Toriel captured and we have to try and figure out why he captured Toriel, we have to figure out why he's trying to force us to keep playing these games. It's interesting and adds more to his character. So the fact that if they're more of a larger part and they didn't get captured, I feel like that would have taken away from Tenna's character, and I don't want that to happen. I really, really like Tenna's character the way he is now. And with getting multiple weird routes, I completely disagree. Obviously, the aspect of Deltarune is the choices here don't matter, which is obviously wrong. Your choices do matter. If you don't get all of the recruits in certain chapters, certain stuff can happen. In Chapter 3, Tenna actually dies. Tenna does not get brought back. He is actually dead, so you can, like, that heavily impacts the story. With Chapter 4, if you don't get all the recruits, when Jackenstein is lifting you up on that one tower, he actually dies. So there is actually impacts to what your choices do have. That being said, the weird route itself is supposed to be weird. It's supposed to be something you went out of your way to do, so very, very, very specifically. So the fact that we would get multiple ones, I don't really like too much. I do imagine we're definitely going to get probably multiple endings, perhaps. It just depends what's going to happen when we do go through and get to Chapter 7. But I really do feel like the Weird Out is supposed to be its own thing. The idea that you are going to have a normal or pretty much identical adventure no matter what, but you have to do something very specific to get a kind of a different ending or a different result. Rules card has the potential to be Deltarune Sans or fit a roughly similar note at least. Think about it, what do they have in common? Both comedic characters that don't seem like they could or pose a threat. That is until the end of the game where you were just awful. Sans tries to stop you to it, Rules could do as well. I'd argue Rules is a lot more powerful than he seems. Even he doesn't demonstrate it as the Rules card, he has the ability to change the rules of the game. He demonstrates his ability in Chapter 3, and by his completely changing the battle theme, battle menu, sorry, it would be quite cool, and he's one of my favorite characters. It doesn't seem impossible. This does kind of seem like your own personal headcanon, which, don't get me wrong, that's not necessarily a hot take, but I will agree kind of that I do feel like we might have an actual real boss fight with Rules card. That being said, you're kind of confusing what a joke character versus a mysterious character actually is. With Sans, in Undertale, he's obviously supposed to be a funny character. He has gags, he makes bad puns, but there's a layer to mystery to him. Immediately when you get introduced, he says, "I'll meet you up ahead," but instead he walks the opposite way. There's something underlying that you don't really know, and you get a taste of that when you are in the MTT resort and you have that conversation with him, and he obviously says you'll be dead where you stand. He has a presence and he still has mystery, even if he's a character that doesn't really care too much. In terms of the genocide route, when he does care, it's because he's put at that time where he can't afford not to care anymore. He literally says that. With Rules, he's supposed to be a very, very joke character. He's not supposed to be taken seriously. The characters themselves don't necessarily take him seriously 100%. As a matter of fact, even Toby does kind of believe this. Originally, he actually was going to have a battle and a battle theme, but Toby scrapped it because it sounded way too cool and epic for a character like Rules. You can 100% go and Google Rules scrapped battle theme, and you'll get it. It sounds really good, but does not fit the character considering he's supposed to be kind of the joke, pathetic character. I mean, in all of the chapters he is in, he's just kind of there and is just kind of an obstacle that we have to get past. Not necessarily like a big threat. That being said, I could 100% see him being a boss that has somewhat level of difficulty, but I don't think he's ever going to be to the level of Sans is. Susie and Noelle have little to no chemistry as a romantic couple. That is one of the hottest takes I have seen, not only on this post that I made, but ever, regarding any fandom, any franchise ever. That's insane. Now, I do want to point out, this is not something about like a ship. You can have ships in different fandoms and whatever, and everyone is going to do ships. But for Toby to specifically write out a very obvious romantic couple and a story that has been building since chapter 2 and had insane development in chapter 4, the idea that you're saying they have little to no chemistry is just you didn't read or skipped all the scenes with them. Like, literally, Deltarune and Undertale fans can't read, because I don't see how you can come out with them not necessarily liking that. I can understand maybe you prefer a different ship or whatever. I know a lot of people like other ships, prefer Susie and Noelle, but saying that it's no chemistry or little to no chemistry at all is you actively not reading the game about reading. I wish attacking enemies also contributed to sparing enemies. It feels so redundant for the game to constantly give me new weapons that do nothing if I intend to recruit everyone. Like, maybe damaging an enemy can give you a bit of mercy percentage, while certain weapons give more attack. Yeah, no. That's literally what the point of the weapons are. You're supposed to make an active decision if you want to spare enemies or if you want to attack enemies. Because there's, aside from a couple characters dying, like I mentioned previously, where Tenna will die if you don't have everyone spared, and if you don't have everyone spared in Chapter 4, Jackenstein will die. That is an active decision that you have to make, and you have to live with that outcome. So if you're already deciding to recruit people, it's not really redundant for the game to give you weapons if someone else is going to have a new one. And even then, the weapons can still be useful. If the weapon you get after defeating the knight can be used against the titans and actually make speedrunning quicker, I don't feel like it's redundant. And attacking enemies to give you spare does not make sense, because you can attack enemies until you can pacify them, but by that time they're just asleep, and you're literally pacifying them by putting them to sleep and like sending them away and recruiting them. But attacking enemies and then they get spared, it does not make any sense, so I do not agree with that at all. I really don't care what anyone says, but Rouse has warned us about the warring. I know Susie actually calls him out for not mentioning the warring, but saying that if too many dark fountains are opened, a terrible calamity will occur, or whatever he says, is good enough to not make another fountain. I don't know this really does mean anything, but it still annoys me. I will technically agree with you that he did warn us about the warring. That is correct. He did say something about the warring. But you're wrong, because she calls Rouse out for not telling the entire story. She doesn't specifically call him out for just the warring. It's that he lies by omission. He doesn't tell the full story all right away. When she calls him out in that scenario, he didn't tell them that Gerson was a Darkner. He knows so many things he doesn't know when to tell, and she rightfully calls him out. If what you're talking about with the roaring that Rouse did tell us, he could have told us at the beginning of chapter 2. If he had blatantly just told Queen what would happen with the roaring, then none of chapter 2 would have happened, because she wouldn't have any reason to try and capture Noelle, to try and make another dark fountain, because she was only guessing based off the knight's actions. So if Rouse has told stuff like in an actual cohesive way at the beginning instead of lying and hiding what he truly knows, then it would be a lot easier. And that's why Susie calls him out, not specifically because of the roaring itself, but because he's lying and holding with information. And that is going to be it for this video. I hope you enjoyed this. I definitely enjoyed reading these hot takes, even if some of them were kind of wrong or whatever, but I had a lot of fun. There is a couple more other hot takes on this post. I'm not going to take the post down. I'm going to leave it up. So when we get more posts on that actual thing, I might do a sequel if you guys would want to see it. But again, big thank you for everyone subscribing to make me hit 500 subscribers. But that's going to be about it. Stay noble. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.